Hello, and welcome to another weekly reading. I have got some very calming oils here. Clary Calm, Divano, which is a very good anti-inflammatory oil, and In Tune, which is a really good grounding oil. So we really feel like we are needing calming, grounding, and anti-inflammatory this week because Mars is very, very present in our archetypal sky at the moment. We start sort of integrating the full moon in Aries, which we had on Friday last week, and that is Mars ruled. So we're already feeling Mars as we start the week and we process what went down for us over that full moon. And then we have Mercury changing signs. He's been in a retrograde in Virgo. He's going to shift later in the week into Libra. And we have Mars currently in Libra, forming a square to Pluto, and he is conjunct, so that means alongside the south node and opposite the north node. And these are very dharmic and karmic. I'm going to speak more into those in the forecasts about the various lunations, but just to say that it does mean that there is slight inflammation and irritation and aggravation and even potentially aggression where we're trying to make big changes. And I've actually just sent out my newsletter for those of you on my mailing list. Otherwise, you can find it on my website. It seems to me that this week's reading is very tied into the theme of the newsletter, in fact. So we have also Venus finally moving out of her shadow later in the week, around about the same time that this Mars-Pluto square kicks in, and Mercury moves out of Virgo and into Libra. Sorry, trying to get all my ducks in a row in my brain there. So it is going to be a week, and looking at the cards, which we'll jump into now, a week of deep reflection and a need to make some changes. So remember, when I use oils in the vignette of the reading, these oils infuse the energy of the reading and are sent out to everyone on an energetic vibrational level. And the same applies with the crystals. And I am literally going in with some strong quartz energy here. Choose a card between 1 and 4 and let's jump in. The card number that you choose is your extra focus for the week, but this is a general reading, so it's not personally for any one person. It's for us as a collective, but whoever finds this reading, and actually whenever you find this reading, even if it's not for the date of the week that I initially drew it for, it'll have something there for you. So if you've got your number, let's jump in. And it starts pretty tough, but it ends pretty great. So, these two. The Three of Swords and the Tower, they feel like old friends to me now. The kind of friends you maybe kind of feel a little cautious about when they come to visit, but they are there for a reason and they come to support. So the Three of Swords is clearly a heartbreak card. And this is super interesting for me. We've got a Three of Swords, a Three of Wands, and the major arcana 3, the Empress. That is 3 threes. That's pretty powerful. So the Three of Swords is it's a mental card because it's swords, and that is the element of air and our intellect. However, this for me is always a card, and I've said it before because we have had this card numerous times. This for me is such a card where we realize the heart-mind connection. Because if anybody's ever experienced grief or loss, and there's many different ways to experience grief or loss, then you will know how physically painful, so that's my heart, mind, body, how physically painful that can feel when the emotions are completely overwhelmed. And it doesn't matter where we're spiraling in our head, what our thinking process is. It's almost like you can't tell the difference in this state, whether it's a thinking thing, an emotionally feeling thing, or a physically feeling thing, because it's just so intense. And it's like she's fallen to her knees and she's just saying, please, please, please make this not the truth. Now we've got this card upside down. And that is showing that there is a resistance to accept that. So I want you to think about, first of all, you may already have been going through loss on some level, and you may be struggling, which is why it's upside down, struggling to accept the loss of things. So that could be the loss of a job. And I would say, especially if it ties strongly into your identity. So a job that you were very identified with, the loss of a relationship that you were very identified with, losing a person to death, where you just can't accept the loss. There's many different ways that we can lose things and go through this heartbreak and grieving. But the other option with it as being upside down, especially as this one is also upside down, the other option for me with this that comes up strongly is those things that we know we need to let go of, that we know it's time to mourn and grieve and accept the end of, and we're refusing. So if you were in a job and you were fired from that job and you didn't want to leave and you really identified with that job, that's the first type. You didn't have a choice. It was taken from you. Now you have to somehow find a way to accept, and you're struggling to do that. On the other hand, if, for example, somebody you have to end a relationship, or you have to close your business, and you aren't ready to accept that. That's the second kind, where you are the one that needs to actually take the action now, and there's a resistance. So either it's happened and you're resisting the acceptance of it, or it hasn't happened because you're resisting the acceptance of it. So that's where we find ourselves here. And with the Tower upside down as well, and this is always a little bit of a tough card. There's always a bit of lightning happening and fire happening when you see this card, and it's kind of like those shocks and shifts. And I often think of this card as being very Uranian, because Uranus is this revolutionary game changer, and it comes in these sudden flashes, oftentimes challenging flashes. And even here, with this card being upside down, I think it's kind of speaking to the same thing as the Three of Swords, except that it's almost more inevitable. For example, we could stay miserably in a job or a relationship forever, just through sheer stubborn resistance to change. But when we have the Tower come in, we don't really have a choice. Things are changing, things are going to change, and the sooner we get on board with the change, the better. So if you know that lightning is going to strike the tower and it's going to burn down and you're going to have to get out, you'll start running down the stairs and try and get out before that happens. Whereas if you aren't accepting it and you're staying, and the weather forecast is saying, go to ground, don't stay in high towers, and you stay in that high tower anyway, when that lightning strikes, you're going to have to leap from the burning building. And, when that does happen, you'll wish you'd left sooner. So it feels like we really are looking at the moment at the things that we wish we'd left sooner, the things that we wish we'd accepted sooner. This is where we'll be heading with it. For right now, it doesn't feel like that. For right now, we might be digging our heels in, especially if you have strong fixed signs. I'd say you're probably digging your heels in. It's also eclipse season now. So the last full moon started the eclipse portal. It wasn't an eclipse, but in the next new moon and the following full moon, we're having eclipses. So we're in the eclipse portal, and eclipses tend to have this kind of big shakeup. Sometimes we don't see it until down the line, and sometimes it's very clear. This will depend on your chart and where it hits your chart and so many different factors. And if you're wanting to know that on a more personal level, please do look me up for readings. But in the meantime, just recognize that the beginning part of this reading is showing us that there is something we are all resisting. So there is some part of our personality that has died or needs to die, and we need to get on board with that and realize we are so much more than that one thing that we identify with. And I mean, it might be more than one thing, life's been kind of crazy for most of us, and maybe there's lots of parts of your identity that are falling away, and it's excruciating. But the beautiful thing is that the rest of the sort of reading is showing us what happens once we're through it. And the only way through it is through it. But the longer we resist and we cling and we don't move, and remember that wonderful saying, you have to feel to heal. And that is what is happening in that Three of Swords. I mean, she is in the feels. She cannot get away from what she's feeling, even if she wants to. But in the protection upside down version of this card, she's not properly feeling, right? But you can see in the image the grief, the loss, the despair. And sometimes when we get right the way through those things, we feel them all the way down to the bottom. There's only one way to go, and that's up. And that's kind of where we find ourselves in the latter part of this week with the Three of Wands, where the sort of ignition of passion and creativity and excitement and enthusiasm and optimism, that's the energy of fire. And this is, as I always say with this card, this is one of the more calm fire cards. She's waiting. Fire doesn't tend to wait for anything, but here she's kind of in that space of, okay, I've laid the groundwork. I've done what needs doing. It's almost like if you spent all your tears and you howled at the moon when it was full, and you grieved and you lamented and you died. You died. Those parts of you that you had not wanted to let go of died. And now you know that the decomposition of those old parts of you became the fertile ground that leaves you in the Three of Wands waiting for your ship to come in, or waiting for the waves to arrive. So it's a very positive thing. But again, it's kind of like we've got to get there. We need to let parts die. And we can clearly see with both of these cards in the front upside down that there is a resistance in us to do that. I can resonate very strongly with how hard it can be, even when you have a knowing of what needs to go, how hard it is to let it go. So that's where we're at. That's the really important piece here, is if we can let this go, the promise of the fertile ground. And then the Empress card, I mean, she's just all about fertility, abundance, nurturing, nourishment. She is the ultimate in feminine energy. I mean, you can see she's literally Mother Earth. There's a big full moon above her there. She has the waves, a shoal of fish and water over her shoulders. She is very connected and grounded. You can see the earthy tree sort of roots growing in her hair. Her face is very serene. She is swollen with child, which is the earth, and filled with milk and ready to nourish and nurture. And so that is also a very abundant card. You could almost look at it a little bit like the Queen of Pentacles kind of energy on steroids, because the major arcana are always kind of more intense and more archetypal. So where the minor arcana are more personalized and more able for us to bring them into our small world, the major arcana are big world things. So big time rewilding, we might say, from this, and almost like get on that surfboard and allow yourself to float to a new space and relabel yourself. So all of those parts of your identity that you were so self-identified with that you just resisted letting go of, what's the new story? How do you find new labels for yourself that you actually prefer, that fit you better now? You don't have to be all that you were. You can be who you are becoming, and let go of some of those things. But the chapters of the book that you have already written are still part of you. They still infuse you with their energy and inform the way you move forward. However, it is time for a new beginning, and it is very, very much time to let go of some deeply entrenched parts of ourselves that no longer serve us. And hard as that is, the promise is beautiful when we let ourselves do that. So I'm really sending a lot of love. I hope that you are feeling supported in this. And if you're wanting a private reading or any of the things that I offer, please do get in touch. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful week.